Matthew 5:13. Anne read a lot. And I want to, there's some things I want to say before we read. So I don't know if we should read it all again or just do the commentary, I'm not sure. When I asked Raya to prepare it, I forgot to say, have them only read the parable of light and salt. So we were just supposed to read the tiniest fragment, and all this got read. It's way more than I would have read in one section. Now I'm not sure what to do. And I want to say that this isn't going to be an easy one for me to teach on because, so Christianity has political ramifications, it has civil ramifications, and then there's sort of that element of Christianity that's just concerned with coming into union with God. That's my area. That's my slice of the pie. I just don't care how it applies politically. I mean, I think about it for myself, but I don't ever want to be involved in that. I don't want to be involved in how it looks civilly. So I just don't care about that. And so some of this is out of my purview, let's say. And one of the things they told me to stay out of and not teach was the law. It's not that I don't believe in every one of the rules. I totally believe in them, and individually I encourage everyone to follow them. But it's not something I spend a whole lot of time on. So this is new to teach. I have some things to say about all of it. But here's what I want to say first. Whenever you hear anything Jesus is saying, you have to remember sort of what the core of salvation is and what the core of Jesus' teaching was, so that anything else you hear is situated within that core. So here's how you have to think about anything he says as a sort of overview. The way the priest that trained me talked about it was, you have to think of all of the white on the page as God's infinite love. That's a really good way of looking at it. And I think of it in the same way. What is salvation? What is this thing that we're so impressed by? What's so powerful about this? And I think I'll tell a story, a friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name, but I have a friend who was an MMA fighter, a professional MMA fighter. You could look up his fights. He fought Anderson Silva. He fought these hugely famous, he lost. But he fought him. And he's now, what is he now? He got out of that world. He got to the top of that world, right up there with the very best of the best, and found it empty. And it's something he had been chasing and seeking. And he said he had the money and the girls. He was young at this time. Money and the girls and the fame was all there, and it meant nothing. What he thought he was going after, he got, and it was empty, and he quit. And he's now what do they call it? Right below a doctor, a physician's assistant, something like this. It's almost a doctor, and that's what he does now. And he's got a son who has some emotional disorders, some social disorders, and has some behavioral problems that have been coming up. And he, for whatever reason, decided to get back on this path a few months ago. And he's on the path, and if I kind of want to invite him to move back. I think he's in Kentucky. But I'd really like him to be here and be a part of this. He's a really neat guy. But so his son, he's been worried about his son, as any parent does. I know I have, worried about my daughter. Just because you can't help it as a father, you can't help it. And you're always thinking, what can I do better and what can I do different? And it takes up mostly what you think about all the time is, how can I be better? Because that love that is born when you have them, you just can't help it. And, just funny, but like Mary said, if I got to save one of you, it's her. And I said, if I got to save one of you, it's her too. It's just, that's it. This is first. This is everything. This is it. So he had that kind of love. He was already on a spiritual path. He just wasn't on this one. And he'd learned to not be selfish and all these kinds of, really had learned to engage as a father in a deep and profound way. So worry, and no way to reach this kid. I would give you more details, but they're not mine to give. No way to reach this kid. And so he's back on this path now. He's got Christ in his life. These things are now happening to him. He's entered the light of grace. He's entered the light of grace. He's basking in the light of grace. So I suggested praying for this kid. This is your child. Go in at night, put your hands on them, and pray for them. So he took that seriously. And he started doing it, I'm guessing six, 7 nights a week. 2 kids. So I hadn't spoken to him in now 2 months. So he called me, I think yesterday, maybe the day before. I can't remember now. So what's going on? How's it going? Oh, not much is going on. I wasn't sure I was going to call. And then he just unloads all these incredible things that are going on in his own spiritual life, but in his kid's life. He said, I really took that seriously, and I've been going in there every night and being really serious about it. And he said, absolute, radical, night and day difference in the behavior of my son. He said, I will never worry again about what I'm missing as a father. Everything I wanted to pass on to my child through words that I couldn't pass on, that I couldn't say right, that I couldn't do, is just manifesting in him by going in and doing energy work. And he talked about his daughter too, 2 very different children. He said, if I put my hands on my son, it's like putting my hands on the ocean. He said, I don't go, but my son goes to the ocean. And it's changing everything. Things he couldn't get straightened out, things he couldn't father better to get straightened out, happening. He said, with my daughter, it's different. She's fighting it, she's processing. That's a little more like my daughter. There's some ocean, and then there's some, she's shoving my hand off, she's asleep. But and then I even trick her, I'll just stay a half inch away, and still, it brings things up to work through. She works through them. She goes deeper. In a 40-minute session, we get to a place where she's not shoving my hands off anymore. And actually, I guess the last year or so it hasn't really been like that, but forever it was. It's her fighting me, and I'd even say, Cass, just hold still. I'd wake her up and say, hold still. She's, but it's so hot. Your hands are hot. But anyway, hands-on, changed her life. He said it's just changed his son's life profoundly. Profoundly. It's concrete. It's night and day. There's no way that isn't making a massive, massive difference. And all he's got to do is go in there after the kid's asleep and take the time out of his schedule to do the work. That's perfect for what it is for us too. That's what it is. You let Christ be your Savior. You let Christ be your God, your Master, everything, everything. You just say yes. And you come under the light of grace. And that grace begins to shine in your life. And everything begins to change. And sometimes you throw fits. Sometimes you're worse. Sometimes it's like I was telling somebody on the phone that has an unusual amount of shame stored in their hips. God doesn't want you to be ashamed, but God wants you to feel this shame until it's gone. Right? So then that person may throw a fit. They're not here now, just so you know. It's another person doesn't live here. I think the group is powerful now enough that when people aren't in the state, it still works because it's working. You used to have no luck at all if people didn't move here. And no luck at all if they moved away. And they had it when they left. But it seems to be working now. There's a few people now that are out of state. But so that's what grace is. That's what you have to think. Whenever you hear anything Jesus says, first here, you are basking in infinite love for free. Infinite love for free. Love that knows how to heal you. Love that knows how to transform you. Love that knows how to give you the stability you weren't given as a child. Love who knows how to grow you into anything that was lacking or anything that shouldn't have been there that was. This power and this love knows how to heal all that. It just does. And our job is just to let it happen for the most part. So, and that's the grace. That's the grace of God. That's the love of God. And you meditate to absorb that grace. It's just like he goes in and puts his hand on his daughter and it changes her life, or his son and it changes his life. You go and hold still and let God shine that grace on you. And you get better at receiving it. And it gives you everything. And the newer someone is, the more they try to earn it and work for it and get it to happen. And, help add to, get more other things to make sure it works. And that's all my daughter doing all this. That's all resistance. That's all a lack of faith and a lack of trust. And normal. But over time you get more and more sure that this is really everything. Everything. Jesus is shining everything. Knowledge. Jesus is shining. Power. Everything. All of it. That's the backdrop of anything else you hear Jesus say. And I like the overviews, like the Beatitudes, or the ascent of faith, hope, and charity, or peace, joy, love. I like these ascents because they take everything that's going to happen and sort of crystallize it and make it really small and easy to grasp. I just have to think of peace, joy, love, or faith, hope, charity, or the Beatitudes, and I know that I'm thinking of everything that is being infinitely shined inside of my soul as I sit here doing nothing. And more than that, showing me how to sort of be within myself to receive all of that. All of that. How best to receive it. I don't know who, but someone in the last week, there's a lot of breakthroughs going on now. A lot of people growing. Someone in the last week said I don't know who it was, but it was really neat. They got maybe a piece of what it means to be receptive. To actually be receptive. We talk about that the way is feminine. The way is allowing, letting, absorbing, receiving God's grace. And that's what's changing us. And I had a break. There's some things I can never tell you guys anymore. That, first of all, I unless they give me direct permission, I'm never sharing another mystical experience with you guys that I have. That's just out. It's like I just am being told, do not freaking talk about it. But I could share this cool thing that happened, a little bit of a breakthrough recently. It's so subtle. In the night, they wanted me to become a serious human being. I was a kid who played a lot, and that's really good. But I wasn't a grown man. You would be a grown woman if you're a woman. I wasn't an adult. And I wasn't serious about life on many levels. So during the night, among many things, holy sorrow and purification and humility and becoming small and disappearing, they also shined a seriousness on me. And it lasted 15 years. Maybe 12, 11 years of dead seriousness. And my face became serious. I became a serious person. And I liked it because I'd never been a serious person. I'd been a goofy person, a playful person, funny. I liked that gravity. I liked it. It was a neat dimension to be introduced to. But there's this other, don't shine that light on me now. I'm not anywhere near there. They're shining a different light. And I couldn't receive it. I could tell it's shining, but I didn't know any of this, only looking back now, but the seriousness is in the way of it. It's ruining it. I was serious for 15 years. I'm never not going to be a serious person. It's now part of me. But do I got to be serious right now? And I couldn't, so there was this power they were shining, and I was like, there's just this most subtle, I was trying to show it to my wife, and I can't, but all it is just a countenance shift of where I am right now to serious. And that is enough to stop it from coming. So this is what we mean by receptive. It's subtle. You're listening for the power and trying to be like it. What's it doing in you? Do that too. So when it was serious, be serious. When it was holy sorrow, be holy sorrow. But now it's this other thing. I wouldn't know what to call it. It's the precursor to delight, I would say. It's not delight, but it's the precursor. It's like from a seriousness to almost this, but right in the middle. If I go to this, I had in the New Age, I would always come out of the seriousness, go here, and they'd shut me down. It's just this most subtle thing. To be just tuned into the frequency God is shining. What is God shining? And be like that. It's that subtle. And I found it, finally. No doubt about it. I found it. The whole way forward is manifest. It's a new level. I'm in a new place. And I just couldn't. It took that long to oscillate between New Age, Mr. Hippie guy, and super serious dude. I just had to find, in between those two stations, there was this other station. It's probably 80 of them. But I had to find the right one. Once I found it, boom, we're moving forward. And it's happening in a really neat way. That's what we mean by being subtle, receptive, listening for God, and being like God is shining in us. Whatever that is. And I can't do that when I'm a slave to the social instinct. Because then I can act a certain way around people. And I can't be that way when I'm a slave to the sexual instinct, because then I gotta navigate myself around people. Try to get something. Jesus is showing us to become free of these impulses and these instincts and these false motives because they lock us into states of consciousness that are contrary to what God is doing in us. It's all consciousness. It's just all consciousness. And I can't do that if I have, if I'm running my life and I'm deciding what my day's about and I'm deciding how I'm going to be. That, as powerful as that can be, if someone does it, I did it for 10 years, first 10 years of my path, it can be powerful. But we're not concerned with any kind of power other than the power God wants to live through us in the world. That's the only power we're concerned with. It wouldn't matter to me. I've known people with mystical powers. I've known people that could do things with mystical power according to their will, the way they wanted. I've known people with that. I've had that before. But it's not, the monk would say, that isn't supernatural. And I think, what could he be talking about? How could that not be supernatural? It's powers. His note, he said, that's very natural, but not he didn't mean that in the good way. That's very natural. Supernatural is this thing you're doing with God. And it's different. And you could be missing it for a year straight. I think I was missing this frequency. I know it's not this, but it's not what it was. I don't know freaking where it is. And I just finally found it, and it took me a freaking year to find it. That's a year of just, that's growth. They're like, he's going to get it. Here's what he's just just right over the line and right back over the freaking, and finally dropped in all the whole way forward right here. The whole way. But it took a year to find that, of trying and listening. And working with those tendencies that I can't help. the limitations I'm entitled to, the ones that aren't even a sin, it's just me. I'm a limited being with limited capacities. Just doing the best I can do to find it. Okay, so that's behind every rule or regulation or thing Jesus says to do or not to do. What is he trying to preserve? He's trying to preserve the soul's capacity to receive and be transformed by God's power and love. That's all he's concerned with. If there's something don't do or something do, whatever you trace back, if you really analyze and pray and meditate on the regulations that I've done a lot of, it always comes down to trying to preserve a human being and a society's ability to hear God's power and respond and to be changed by it and to keep room for God's power in your life, a place for it. That's all it's about. So they had all these laws they had to be following, hundreds per day. Jesus says, I don't know if we'll reread it, we'll have to see. Jesus says, not one letter or jot from the law will fall away until all is fulfilled. But here we are not following most of them. Why? Because his resurrection and death and ascension fulfilled it all. He reunited human nature with God. Whatever the root sin was that the fall from grace created in human beings, he healed that rift in himself as a human being for all human beings. That's why you can say it is done in you, even if it isn't yet manifest. That's why I don't worry anymore about finding the way and get nervous like people do, because I know I found the way. It isn't manifest enough. and this is when I look the best. Just home life and married life, and it clearly has so much work, so much to be manifest, but it's already done in me, just like it's already done in you. It's there. The fullness of it is there. So I'm just going to go through a few little things. This is where it's going to get. I think that was good. I think the rest of this is going to be lumbering. But when Jesus says you are the light of the world, the salt of the world, let your light shine in such a way as it will glorify God. So always when you meditate on that, first remember you're not meant to hide your light forever. It's wrong. It's sinful. But it can't be shining in that way that the world teaches us to shine. It has to be this kind of shining that really does glorify God and not ourselves. And that's a trick. That's a trick. That's complex stability. That's humility, surrender, confidence, meekness. There's a lot of elements in there for that to be pulled off well. But that's the goal. Jesus says, we'll skip that. Jesus says, if your righteousness does not surpass the Sadducees and Pharisees, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. So what kind of righteousness did they have? They just followed the rules. They might have hated inside. They might have hated it. They might have followed the rules just because it made them look cool in public. But they followed every rule. They did. There's parallels to certain religions that we know about here. And he said, that can't enter heaven. What is the difference? Are you living by the Spirit? Are you doing that way trickier thing of just trying to be a channel for God's will and not knowing for sure how? That's your whole game you're playing. Our whole band is a parable for that. No one cares if you can play really well. We want to know if you can play really well in God. That shuts everyone up, even people that are really skilled. So all of a sudden, like some people come in, they can already tear it up. They can already play super well. But no one cares about that. Can you play well in God's power? That's a different thing. And that gets everyone to just quiet up and become a beginner. It's a whole other thing you're trying to do. It's not just about finding one another. It's about letting that power live through you. And that's different. And that's like life. That's like life. That's like life. How do we let God live through us? It's a very different thing. A being that is conscious and intelligent. Jesus says, be angry and do not sin. That comes from the Old Testament, okay? And he says, do not be angry at your brother without cause. Now, I don't know how in the New Age we got the notion that you should never be angry. But that isn't what he said. He said you're guilty of possibility of hell if you're angry at your fellow without cause. Notice how he doesn't say just angry. Why? Because anger is important. Anger usually, in a perfect world, anger tells you something is wrong in a relationship with somebody or in the world. That arises in me before I've often, justly, before I put together what it is that's wrong. In fact, it's the thing that tells me to look and see. It's an intuitive capacity. It's a good thing. But it also says in the Old Testament, don't let the sun set on your anger. So we're not supposed to stay there. And then there's the whole mess of, if you have issues and you're wounded, you're just pissed for no good reason. Or reasons that happened 15 years ago, and everyone around you catches it. There's that whole mess of cleaning it up, right? It'd be so nice if you could just trust your anger, but I've discovered I can't. He talks about hell over and over. You can be guilty of hell. Why? Why would anger be such a big deal? Why? Well, there's heaven, and then there's what we call hell, which is a lack of all of those things. There's just that's it. He's looking at a very binary here. There's either heaven, God's intention for us to live in profound and infinite love for one another, and honoring of one another, and respect and charity and all these things, justice, all these things. And there's this other thing. And what anger does, if you stay angry, is murder. It's murder. It's death. It casts a person out of love. And it throws yourself out with them. And that's why it's so serious. But remember, he means unjustified anger. And one of the tricky things about meekness is learning to stand up to people in situations that are wrong. Having the courage to do that. That's meekness too. Because there's injustice in the world and there's injustice in our relationships. And it'll never feel right or be okay if we're supposed to say something and we don't. And there was a saint, I can't remember who, that said, if you see something in someone that's in disorder and you don't tell them, it is a grave sin. Now I'm sure, this guy was a saint, so I'm sure if you talk to me and say, yeah, but don't be a jerk, and yeah, but timing, and like the list of like when and how and all that. But ultimately he said, if you see someone is sinning and you don't tell them, that is a grave sin. Because it's the body of Christ witnessing the truth and not speaking it, to help that person come out, to free them. And there's always timing and appropriateness. You don't tell your boss probably. I mean, just big conversations around when and how. And if, you know what I mean? Big conversations. But that's different, isn't it, than just being nice all the time, with this soft notion of love. Just as a teacher, I was useless until I learned this. I thought, well, eventually they'll figure this out. I won't tell them they're wrong, but they're going to get it. A year later, same story. Next year, same story. I realized I am useless because I won't just tell people. Jesus goes on to say, you are guilty of hell. It'd be better to cut your eyes out of your body or cut your hand off than to stumble because of lust. Of course he doesn't mean cut your eyes out. But he's trying to shock the listener. And he probably means it. It would be better. Because he's looking at what's really all about. And this lust is killing everything. It's killing everything. And this is a pet peeve of mine because I was so lustful and I know all the damage it does. So I get it. But no one can trust anyone because of lust. You can't trust men with women, ever almost, because of lust. So now, men don't trust men, women don't trust women, men and women don't trust each other, because we're all lying. Because we shouldn't trust them. And then the people today say, well, you should just trust. You're not confident. It's like, dude, look at the reality. Trust what? Look at the fear that puts every human being in. Because we're lying on that level. The insecurity, the pain, the lack of ability to express oneself. All because of this one thing. It's profound. It might be 20% of the world's pain. Insecurities. Then he says, don't get divorced. And there's like 8 people in here are divorced. And we don't freaking care. And we know we don't care. It's all okay. But you can't build a society. If 2 people say, let's get married, we'll support one another, we'll change one another's plans and trajectories for our whole lives, based on, Mary took this job at Smith so we'd have health insurance. Right? She had this other job that made a lot more money but no health insurance. But she took this job because we needed health insurance so I could live my job. I could follow my dreams. She made a profound sacrifice to support me in following my dream of doing this. What kind of betrayal would that be to leave her then later for some other girl? That's deep and profound betrayal. People promise their whole lives to one another. How can we build a society if people can't honor that? And the other one too, which is, it's like I was thinking roll the dice. Some people marry a partner that's pretty easy for them. It's an easy fit. I don't know if their main way to sainthood is marriage, but for the rest of us, I think divorce rates are 50% now. And then the country's saying they want to break up. I see a parallel. I see a very similar kind of immaturity. You can't live with someone you disagree with? Try being married. If you can't do that, you've never died to the basic level of self. Basic. So everyone's getting divorced. All I see are people who can't even surrender a little. Can't die to themselves a little. That only counts after you keep on this path. So for those of you that divorced, freaking who cares? I wouldn't, if I was divorced 10 years ago, 15, I wouldn't care. I'd never think of it again. I certainly wouldn't feel guilty about it. You live and learn. You know what I mean? Don't beat yourself over the head with this stuff. It's not what it's for. But all these people that can't put up with the other now, that's rooted in not being able to put up with the other at home. So marriage is sort of like a place where you learn to grow up, where you learn to die to yourself. Over years, not over months. Okay, a couple more. He said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This one, I think, has deeper mystical roots. I really think it's profound. And I don't fail to do it. If there's someone that is persecuting me or harming me in life, lately I've run into a little of that. You can bet that at night I am blessing them with as profound of love as I am able to bless them. Why? Because he said to. Because that's what he said to do. That's kind of what healed my marriage. My wife was my enemy. And I mean mortal enemy. At one point it became mortal enemy. There's no one in my life that makes me more angry than this woman. And she doesn't listen and there's no respect. I hope this is funny. Because you know how it is, man. Pray for her. Pray for her. Find God's love for her, right? Find God's love for that person. It doesn't mean what they do is okay. It just means that there's something more important than all of that, which is this thing that unites the body of Christ, which is love. That's all that matters. There's some people, it hurt me recently in my life, personal life, and we're not going to be friends, but I am going to love them for sure. Pray for them, their kids, bless their lives. I'll tell you why I want to do that. Besides because he said it. I want heaven. I want miracles. I want to stand in infinite consciousness. And I just can't hate anybody and do that. It's like, what do you want? What do you want? Of course, my phone just went off. Unreal. That love of God, it's not something you should do. It's not something you should do. It's a power. It is a freaking power, man. And it is an infinite power. And to enter into it is to enter into an entirely new life. Everybody's on the way to that. On a personal note, talking just to my wife, I say, what sucks about being me the most is from here up, I'm in, man. But from here down, I'm just pretty damn immature. And here up, I'm in enough to go into the light and see the infinity of it work a miracle. But here down, don't give a shit. I'm just dragging this dude along. And it takes a long time. It's just a lot of rough edges there. It sucks, but it's the truth. And it's worse, I think, to be able to totally go and see and love 2/3 of you is ready to roll. And 1/3 of you is a child, a petulant child. It's unreal. It just blows my mind. This is what I tell you. We laugh about this stuff. This is what we talk about. It's just like, really? Come on. Most of your life waiting to get that thing healed. Because it just doesn't want to come along. And I want to go along. But that part of me, conditions. I'll go, but there's conditions. It's funny. So funny. But if everyone on the planet stood in that love, that'd be it. There'd be no starvation. There'd be so many healers walking around, there'd be no illness. It's just another universe, an entirely different world. That is God's will for us. And all this stuff, don't do this, do this. If you're married, stay married. If you get divorced, stay divorced. Oh, that was his other rule. He made marriage harder, by the way. Jesus comes in, rolls in on the scene, makes things easier, right? Everyone's like, yeah, dude, this guy's great. And then he makes things harder. In marriage, he makes things harder. Get married, don't get divorced. Unless they're cheating on you. And then there's a couple other. Drug addiction is another one they'll allow divorce for, but it's super strict. Don't get divorced. And if you get divorced, don't remarry. Why do you think you put that one in there? So you won't get divorced. Of course. Like all divorces, well, like Joe over there, he's not such a jerk. I'd rather be married to Joe. I mean, that's it, right? Like, gone. It starts there. The grass is greener. If you can't get remarried, you rethink divorce. And who cares about it? It all matters because we're trying to create a society and a people that can relax enough, trust one another enough, honor one another enough for this love to grow, for this vulnerability to grow, for this other thing that isn't human power or human weakness, this other thing, this God thing, that will change everything and does change everything. And that's our job on the planet, is to the best of our ability, live that and be that in the world. And bring that light into the world. And when people come to hear the band, it's just a parable. The band doesn't matter, but it's a great parable. When people come to hear the band, it affects how we play. And almost always for the better, at least anyone here. So, you guys come and we play. We may not play well that night, but there's a thing. There's your receptivity, and then God's power can come through us because it's there. Well, you add that to every social dynamic you're a part of. Said or unsaid. Spoken or unspoken. Noticed or unnoticed. There's a potential in the room when you're there that's not there when you're not in the room. There's a potential in the world because you're there. Holding that, being that, living that is not in the world without you. Changes everything. I can feel it. Back when I was more sensitive, before people showed up, I'd know where the people were sitting who were going to be the most receptive, and I'd know where the people who were going to be least receptive would be sitting before they showed up. It's all happening. And what could happen in that class depended a lot on the people there, like Jesus, working way more miracles in towns where they had faith and less when they didn't, because they wouldn't let it in. It's like he's bursting light into the illusion, into their world, and they don't want it, and so it doesn't come. That's it, I think. Give me 1 second. Oh, last thing, okay. So, but we got to want love more than, like Clyde used to say, don't defend your ego. It doesn't need defending. And you go, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, well, your ego's trying to kill you. It's the whole reason you're miserable, and all you do is defend and protect it. He said, like, don't do that. That's the part that's causing you pain. Don't protect it. But you gotta. So then he'd say, you got a cactus under one arm and an alligator under the other, and you're just protecting it. You don't want to let it go. So have fun. That's what he would say. And he was so right. So right. But it's hard. It's hard. Hard to let that stuff go. My one friend, mystical guy, Jamie, he had been in some kind of profound union. So he, like Spencer, like a lot of people, already been in union, seen it, at least some degree of it intensely. And he said, I know that everything I'm defending is keeping me from that. And all I want in this world is to go back into it. And I'm defending it anyway. It's so funny. It's so funny. It's so unnecessary, but we do it, man. Sacrificial love is the kind of love that says, I want this, this, and this, but I want love more, so I'm giving up this, this, and this. And we're not talking about the sort of asceticism monks practice, but we are talking about this ego dying. I want to hide, but I want love more than I want to hide, so I won't hide. Or I want to just never shut up. But I want love more than I want that, so I think I'll shut up. And all the little ramifications of that. And it's only sacrificial when we're so embedded in illusion that it feels like sacrifice. And probably the more awake, the less it seems like sacrifice. And it starts to feel like freedom. So Jesus right now is shining everything in you. What is Jill like when she's a Christed being? That is shined in her fully now. Court Christ shined in him now. Now. All of it now. And all the words are just like helping us notice it, helping us navigate, helping us get an idea of what it might look like and what it might not look like. Put us in a place to receive it, to be open to it. That's all it is. But it's all centered around this power that's actually doing it. And man, it's real. It is not fake. That is real. But we were all raised in a world that locks it out, consciously or unconsciously, that won't admit it. It's nope. And we're dying to that. Very last thing I want to say. My journey has been so messy. It's ugly. Big mistakes all the time. Blowing it. Just it's a train wreck. But it's kind of worked out. And I was thinking why, and I would just say, just don't quit. No matter what. That's really what I've done right. The only thing I've done well is I have freaking never stopped. That's it. That's it. Big baby, so immature. Things wrong with me I don't even see till like last year. It's freaking serious, man, really. Some of the biggest stuff, like the biggest thing in the way I just noticed like a few months ago and was able to put a word to it for the first time. Come on, man. But I never quit. Clyde used to say, 1,000 on my left can fall and 1,000 on my right foot can fall, but I am not going to fall. And he didn't mean he's not going to blow it. He meant he's not going to quit. That's for sure it.